Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Welcome back, revolutionaries, to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner for the DiJulius Group. Welcome back, John. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Denise.
John has been speaking all over the country. You've been pretty busy the past couple of months here.
World.
All over the world. Oh, this is true. World.
Yeah.
Global he is, folks.
Global. I am global. This time. This.
Would you say speaking is one of your favorite things to do?
Yeah.
Your job? Yeah. What do you like about it?
Almost everything. The actual on-stage energy, audience, transformation, the epiphanies when you nail it. You see the vanity, instant reaction you get right after or during. It's just so rewarding and you know, I always say this, where I feel like when I feel like I crushed it, the audience makes it, right? So, you know, because if the audience is engaged and I'm not, if the audience wants to be there, if the audience really gets it, you know, I don't know how much that's me or them, but when they're have a really great attitude and hungry, that makes the presenter better, because like if they laugh at something you said or you know, you could tell that they really enjoyed something, you're kind of like, oh, you like that? So I give you the next one, versus the opposite can happen where you get crickets or not the reaction you were expecting. And you're like, oh, you might not like this next one then. So, you know, I just think it's all the instant gratification, but, you know, that you did a job well done.
Do you have a favorite joke of yours, icebreaker story that you like to tell?
Well, the Johnny peeing in the pool story I've used, and that, you know, I don't know if we need to explain it or give a link to it, but that was key in my early days because I didn't have an icebreaker. I didn't know you're supposed to have an icebreaker. Oh, when I would start speaking, I would just come out and just start telling people whatever I was telling them. You know, you got to be better at customer service, and here's how, and this is, you know, blah, 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 blah. And always what seemed to be 5-10 minutes into it, I would just have people staring at me like you are right now. And I wouldn't know if I was telling them something that was like so stupid that like that everyone knows, or they were spellbound with my, you know, great content. And I would, you know, remember kind of panicking, you know, not knowing where I was with, you know, affirmation of them. So taking classes and researching and seeing great speakers, that was, you know, seeing how people came out in the open with a compelling, ice-breaking story. And then I had one that I realized. And so it just did so much. It literally was an icebreaker. It was self-deprecating. It was funny. It was unexpected. You did not see where I was going with it. And then people were rolling, and I was able to draw it to, you know, later on. It just wasn't, you know, getting up there saying, you know, a rabbi, a priest walk into a bar and you tell a funny story for no, you know, reason other than to be funny. It had a reason of what my presentation was. When I, you know, the first few times I did it, I was like, yes, they like me. They're laughing. They're engaged. And then it's you know, the laughter, which may have been 3 to 5 seconds, I was able to think, all right, where am I going next? And adjust. I don't know. It just gave me so much confidence that, you know, they related to me. And it just was just everything to me.
So it sounds like the icebreaker is one of the most important parts of a presentation. would you say?
Yeah. I think it's hard to actually say, but yes, we have 5 elements of a presentation. So whether you're trying to be a better presenter in the corporate world, or you want to do it as a career, you really break your presentation down into 5 elements. And the first thing is the icebreaker, and we can go back through it. And then the second part is setting the stage. The third part is demonstrating proof of concept. And, it's just not my opinion that you should do this. Let me show you who has done what I'm telling you to do and their results, the case studies. The fourth part is like now the call to action. And then the last part, the fifth part, is the close, the strong close, the motivational close to get up and go do this now, and that you want to run out of the room, the training, and do something about it. And I actually think, I don't know, it's hard to say if it's what's most important, because if all you do is have a great icebreaker and but you got no content to follow it up. But I do believe, at least in my experience, myself and in watching other speakers that aren't there yet, we tend to discount the opening and the closing. And so while I didn't have a great opening initially, I'm sure no one does, and I would just get into it and say, this is why you got to be better at customer experience, is because the companies sell more, you retain more, blah, 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 charge more. So I struggled with that until I had an icebreaker. But then for the longest time, I would, it might have been time management and it might have been a lack of a strong close, but I would realize I was at my time. And wherever I was in my presentation, I'd be like, out of time, gotta go. And it was just such an abrupt non-closure. So having a structure of those things, now you can work on, each of them, and you gauge yourself and know that if this is a 30-minute presentation, a 45-minute presentation, an 8-hour workshop, you have to build in each. And, if you're getting near the end, you have to, get to the call to action. And some of these things are only 2-3 minutes. And you have to have the strong close.
You customize all the presentations that you give. Do you go through this process then with each presentation?
So, there's pros and cons. Well, I don't know, pros and cons, but there's if you're a professional presenter, and maybe in the corporate world, you're doing the same presentation. If you're HR, you're doing, orientation or recruiting or, but I do believe in corporate world, you sometimes or a lot of times just getting up there and you have to give something completely different than you did last week or last month. Sales is probably similar, and stuff. And I know that there's a lot of similarities, but sometimes you have to just get up and rally the troops. And no matter what, you got to use that format. Now, when you're doing the same presentation, whether it's in the corporate world, that you're always going to be selling investors, trying to sell, close clients, recruiting employees, onboarding employees, whatever that may mean. And it's going to be a similar presentation every time. Well, then you structure that. My presentations are always structured with that. The customization comes in between of, all right, is this a business to business or a business to consumer type of business or audience I'm speaking to? Take out these examples, put in these examples. And then also when you have examples, I always have external examples, right? This is what the greats do. And then I with a customization, that's going to be the same every time. Where the customization comes in, how does this apply to your brand and land it in your parking lot in a bricks and mortar or a call center or a manufacturer or a professional services? You always have to bring it back to them.
How long does it take to create a presentation? Approximate, say a 1-hour presentation.
Again, if this is the first time you're doing it from scratch and you want it to be great, it should take you 10 times that easily. Today, I have the luxury of, we just have so many presentations and workshops and our 10 commandment methodology that I can draw and all. So I save best practice, if you're, probably for anyone, is I save every presentation I've ever done. Couple reasons. A company might be bringing me back the second time this year or the second time in 5 years. And I want to go back to that and see what examples I used and not, use them again and not use the same icebreaker and not use the same motivational quote and not use the same Snow White story and jokes and examples. So you always want that. But I also, when I'm speaking, I'm like, I have a good example to that I want to use for this company. I know I've used it before in a similar industry. I can go pull up that healthcare industry presentation and grab that example. And now I don't have to reinvent the slides. But if it's the first time, it should be, 10 times. And longer presentations are unfortunately easier because you have time. It's the shorter ones. And I forget if it was Abraham Lincoln or whoever famously said, if I would have had more time, I would have wrote you a shorter letter, right? My hardest presentation that took me 3 months was my TEDx talk. That was 10 minutes. So if I would have had an hour, I wouldn't have had to work that hard, because if you stumble, I know I'm going to make my point a little bit. I'm going to, but when you only have 3, 6, 10 minutes, you have to nail every second of it. And you have to pick and choose and how to articulate that, exactly how you can articulate it without, word salad and all those things.
All right. We will be right back after this. So, John, what's the best advice you ever got when you decided to become a speaker? I'm
going to answer it a few ways, a few times. So I remember the first speaker I ever saw was David Wagner. In the beauty industry, wrote the book Life as a Daymaker, and I was just in awe of him. I didn't have a lot of experience of seeing enough speakers. I remember when I started speaking, I used to use David Wagner stories, way too many. And David Wagner talks about and then I met him where literally after he spoke, I was fanboying him, and we were crossing the street in downtown Cincinnati. I just mentioned, I speak too, and if I had $1 for every time I mention your name in one of my presentations, because I always wanted to give him the credit because it wasn't my stories. And he just said to me, do what Lou Holtz told me, tweak it and make it your own. And I wasn't sure, if he was telling me to stop using his material. And so I thought about it, and I realized it was so profound. The stories I was using that happened to David in a hotel, happened to me in a different environment. And I didn't have to use David's story. And then when you own the story and it's yours, and so converting these aha moments into where that happened to me. And then the other one was with Jack Mackey, who we know, a professional speaker. I was speaking in Chicago at the National Restaurant Association, in the 90s. And to show you my importance, Colin Powell was on at 1 p.m. on main stage, and I was on at 8 a.m. in a breakout, which is the way it should have been. But luckily for me, Jack Mackey was in the audience, which made me a little nervous. He was a professional speaker who I had spoken with at a conference a year or two earlier. So I was, at that time, we're, friendly and we knew each other. But I was a little nervous. I had a professional speaker in the audience. And so after I felt like I really, crushed it. And so I was looking for validation, and Jack came up and complimented. I said, Jack, no, really, how did I do? And I'm sure I just wanted him to say amazing. And he said, really? And as soon as he said, really, I was like, no, not really. Don't tell me that. And he said, your presentation's really good. He goes, you're opening. Just open with your story, a mixed story. And this is what I remember him saying. I'm sure it might have been different words. He goes, don't come out and thank, like I had just done, the MC for introducing me. And don't tell the audience how honored and flattered you are to be there. A, everyone does that. B, no one in the audience feels better. And is like, oh, he's so flattered that he's speaking to me. He says, come out mid-story. And then that's what I remember hearing. And I thought about it, and it changed everything. I used to come out and say, oh, thank you, Denise. And it's such an honor to be in front of such an impressive group, yada, yada. And then, which was, felt like 30 seconds, a minute. And then I'd finally get into my opening which was my Johnny peeing in a pool story, which, if you want to provide a link, if someone hasn't heard that. So as a result of Jack's thing, and again, this changed everything with A, having a great icebreaker, but B, the way Jack told me to do it. So how I took it is I would tell the person introducing me, hey, Denise, before we get up there, Denise, you're going to introduce me. I'm not going to come out from back of stage. I'm not going to walk on stage. If you need a hug now, I'll give it to you. Just introduce me and just walk off, which was unusual. And then, unless it's a huge event, 500 more, 1,000 people, I don't do this. But if it's less than 500, then I will start in the back of the room. And when they say, please welcome John DiJulius, I start walking up as the audience applause starts saying, I just start talking. And I'm mid-story. As I'm walking, I say, it was February 1998. I was in Orlando, Florida. And so to what Jack said, first, you don't know where I am. You just hear me on the speaker. So you're spinning and looking, and I'm weaving through the tables, the audience. So that's off the hook. But also, it was February 1998. I was in Orlando, Florida. Is kind of, back then at least, it was a bizarre way. Like, what is he doing? And then I worked my way to the stage, and it's all choreographed now because I've done it so many times. But what I was doing was buying 30 more seconds of your attention. You're like, this is bizarre. Where's he going? What's February 1998? What's in Orlando, Florida? And, and then, like I said, it's a really good story that then builds me credibility and humanizes me. But it was such a great way to just come out of the gates strong versus thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. And it's such an honor to be in front. You guys are such a great audience and good looking too, right? So those two are probably two of my favorite advices that really helped my career.
You use slides when you present. I know some people don't. And I know some of us don't use them well, meaning some of us, guilty myself, too many bullets, maybe use them as a script. What are your recommendations for using slides as well as you do?
So first off, you don't have to have slides. I do. But if you think of great presenters, to me, whenever I ask, when we do presentation skills classes, whenever I ask who make the best presenters, it's always the same answers. It's not all, but great CEOs, Steve Jobs of the world, Howard Schultz's, Walt Disney, whomever. Politicians, not all, but, politicians historically are great, captivating audiences. Coaches, right? And comedians. And they all are trying to get everyone, to hear their story, hear their vision, rally the audience, the group, the team, the country, whatever. But one of the examples in there is, have you ever seen a comedian use PowerPoint? No, the answer is no. But they still do an incredible job of which we need to get to is the power of storytelling. So now if you are going to use and you choose to use slides, there's some great stuff out there. Really bad PowerPoint by Seth Godin, and there's all these videos and stuff. And I remember I read Seth Godin's, because I did what everyone did in the early days. My PowerPoint was all bullet points and just one word. My bullet point might just be Denise, and that would tell me to tell the story about Denise. And the next bullet point would be Eric, and the next bullet point would be Disney or whatever. And it was just my script, and I was so proud of that. And then when I read Seth Godin's really bad PowerPoint, he said all of that. Words that mean nothing to the audience, it just means something to you. And I was, so mad and said he was wrong. And then I started, at that time, I was, speaking more. So I got to see real professionals and speakers who were up there. You totally could tell the difference. And then I actually saw Seth Godin back then speak, and he spoke about, and I went up to him. I said, but what if I don't remember the fourth bullet point on that, that I'm supposed to say? He goes, so what? The audience doesn't know that you forgot to tell a story about Denise. But his real message was show a picture of Denise, show a picture of Disney, show a picture of the war monument or whatever it is that you're showing. So like in the icebreaker where I talk about, Johnny peeing in a pool at Port Orleans, I don't know what my bullet point would have been. Johnny peeing in a pool maybe, right? Which also lets a cat out of bag. I got an image of Port Orleans swimming pool, because that's where it happened. So, you should never have more than 6 words. You should never have bullet points, unless it's a quote or something, and always replace it with a visual. So it enhances, so they see what you're talking about. But if the slide is just there for you, it's distracting from the thing. And don't have anything appear before you need it. And that's a big mistake. So you might have, let's say, 4 things that come up on this slide that you want to talk about. But I'm talking about the first thing. Even if it's a picture, even if it's 4 pictures, because now you're looking at picture 2, 3, and 4, or bullet 2, 3, and 4. But I'm talking about 1, and you're wondering why I have a picture of a pool at Disney, or you're wondering why I have, a picture of a soldier, and you're not listening to what I'm saying now. So have, your visuals come up when you're, going to talk about them and not before.
Need help getting brilliant at the basics? Contact Claudia at DiJuliusGroup.com and find out how the team of consultants at the DiJulius Group can help you get there.
You mentioned storytelling, and for me, that's a favorite. When you have a speaker that's a great storyteller, that's what you remember. It's not, sometimes there are great little ahas, but when they're put together in a story, that's what I think attracts us to not just the person speaking, but it helps us remember what it was that they taught us.
Yeah. So, first I say, in my opinion, there's 3 types of speakers, presenters. Whether they're professional or they're not, you still fall into this one of the categories. Educators, entertainers, and the combination, right? And the combination's the best, right? But if an audience has to choose between an educator, someone who's just giving you content, or an entertainer, what do you think they would prefer?
Well, I've seen the scores,
and
I know how well the entertainers do.
Yeah. But, truth be told, that's kind of not the best use of your time, right? Yeah, laughing and feeling good and being inspired, but you really, what good is it without the content that you need to go back and do those things better? But if you're an educator who's the lecturer behind the podium, that, the professor in college type that we think about, people are looking at their watch and they're zoning out. And to me, it's my criticism of the Catholic Church of, every time I go and they're doing the, whatever from, the 1600s, I'm just thinking, oh my God, I have to get home and cut the lawn. And who am I kidding? I haven't cut the lawn in a while, but all the errands I need to run and I'm not listening, right? So you want to be an educator or entertainer, which really comes into storytelling. Mickey Williams, a great presenter and, a storyteller, she said at one of our customer service revolution conferences, data tells, stories sell. And that's so true. So you need data. Hey, listen, 62% of the time, if you, drop the ball on a customer and make it right, they'll be more loyal than had you not dropped the ball. That's the data. Now tell the story of a client that happened to us 28 years ago, that we got color on her blouse and she called and, we sent her a check for the blouse and a gift card for inconvenience and, didn't, squabble with her. A year later, we not only retained her, but, referred 18 new customers. Usually tell that story a lot better. But, the aha to that was the $250 the blouse cost me to, refund her. Where could I spend that and get 18 new customers? So in marketing, I tell, everyone to get color on everyone's clothes, right? And so that story is more impactful and memorable than that 63% of the time. If you, make it right, a situation, make a brilliant comeback. So it's those. But if you want to be a great presenter, you work on storytelling. And if you're a great storyteller, it'll just change. You'll have everyone in the palm of your hand. Now, the secret to storytelling, this is how every one of my presenters, and this is kind of how the structure is facilitated, the 5 elements of a great speech. So let's take away the icebreaker and strong close, which is 1 and 5. The middle one, setting the stage, proof of concept, contact.
Ready.
But the bottom line, to really simplify everything, if you want to be a great presenter or a much better presenter than you are, learn storytelling. It is that simple. And so, storytelling has 3 components that make a great story, a great movie, a great book, a great presentation. Every Disney, every great movie in the world has this. A villain, a victim, and a hero. And a villain is what's wrong in the world, in your industry, in your company, in society, whatever you're talking about, that we need to galvanize the audience, your team, whoever you're speaking to, your listeners, around to slay the Darth Vader of the world. The victim is not only the person that is being victimized, but it's also the domino effect. So let's go with, a simple topic: living a healthier lifestyle. The villain is one of many things. It's the fast food companies. It's food manufacturers that put all the crap and preservatives. It might be your lifestyle, that you travel all the time and you work 100 hours a week, and it's all of those things. That's the villain. The victim, the consequences is that you're not in the best shape of your life, that you're not the best version of yourself. You're out of shape, overweight, lack of energy, gonna die sooner, all that. So obviously the victim is the person who's not eating or in the best shape of their life, but it's the domino effect of their family, of their coworkers, of anyone that's dependent on them. Because if you're not the best version of yourself, you're not going to be there for your kids, clients, community, blah, blah, blah. And the hero is never the speaker. It's the solution. It's the proof, the concept. Buy these milkshakes, buy this protein powder, whatever, follow this methodology. The hero is the audience, the listener, that if they do this, once they do this, and they're going to do this, they're the hero because they're going to be more productive, more happy, more healthier, less depressed. Kids are in a better relationship with their kids. Their clients are going to be more successful. Their employees are going to reach more success. So it's the villain, victim, and hero. And so that's really goes with our 5 stages. Icebreaker sets kind of up, but now when you get into stage 2, element is setting the stage. That's really who's the villain. And every presentation I've ever done always comes out with what's wrong with customer service in the world today, and how it's affecting your company, how it's affecting companies, how it's affecting people, how isolation and loneliness and frustration. And then you get into the proof of concept. But let me tell you, the companies that do this better, that are more successful, that don't have to compete on price, aren't laying off, that, all the bad things, that don't have brand tears, are the ones that do this, this, and this, and this. And here's what they're doing. They are more profitable, more this, higher retention, yada, yada. And then the hero is, you could be the hero by following this methodology. Run out and get this book. Attend the Customer Experience Executive Academy, whatever that may be. But all of that is in the storytelling. All of that has to be storytelling. That, if you watch whoever your favorite presenter may be, and we have so many. We have the TikTok and YouTubes that I always say, someone who wants to be a better presenter, besides taking our class, you have such an advantage that I didn't have when I started nearly 30 years ago, is you have the internet. Go watch the top 10 TED Talks of all time. Regardless of their topic, the topic may have nothing to do with what you're interested in, but you're going to see great presenters. You're going to see someone, David Wagner, who I talked about, is totally different than me, 100% different than me. He's very calm. He's a monotone in a way, which works for him. But he does 2 things masterfully that I don't, and I try to. As a result, he pauses after all his ahas to let it set in, and he repeats himself. I think Simon Sinek does this too. He'll repeat the point he just made. Right? I want to learn from that, even though his style isn't mine. I have to work in pauses, repeat some good points before I jump on to, the next thing that I want to tell you, and it never settled in. But then there's high energy, there's low energy. Why did they open with that? Why did, they come out mid-story? Why did they have that follow that? And you just learn styles that are more for you. Seeing Tom Peters and Jimmy Valvano speak 25, 30 years ago gave me the permission of that's the style I can own. It's more suited for me than a David Wagner. I did try to speak like David Wagner because I thought that's the way he had it. I just failed miserably. But once I saw Tom Peters and Jimmy Valvano speak, and they had so much energy and they were running around, they were yelling, it gave me permission that, I didn't know I was allowed to do that. And that really unleashed my style. Now, as you may recall, I hired Patricia Fripp as a speaking coach, great speaking coach. And I remember she watched a bunch of my videos before coming to work with me. And she said, John, you're loud. And I said, yes, I am. I was really proud of it. And she was, I pop microphones, literally pop a microphone, right? And so I thought she was complimenting me. I'm like, yeah, isn't that cool? And she said, you know what, being loud is all the time? I'm like, no, what? And, I'm thinking attention getting. And she says, it's the same as monotone. I thought about it. I'm like, oh my God. If I'm always yelling after a certain, you're going to get adjusted to that. And it's just going to be monotone and me yelling the whole time. So she said, listen, that's your style. That's great. But when you want to make your point, stop, pause, and say it quiet. And that's when you'll catch. She said, I run around. The two things she said, you are loud all the time and you never stop pacing. And again, I was like, yeah, isn't that great? And she said, no. She said, it's your style, great, but work in going a little quieter and maybe stop pacing when you make the point. And that'll catch people's attention. Like, why did he stop? And why can't I hear him as easy anymore? Those are the things. So, but the storytelling, villain, victim, and hero are just essential.
You have learned a lot from a lot of different speakers and coaches over the years. And I know you train people now in presentation skills, and I'll make sure I put that in our show notes. That's coming up June 10th and 11th. We also teach it in our Customer Experience Academy and Employee Experience Academy. They have to present each quarter. One of the things people struggle with, I know, is just the fear of public speaking. So maybe they aren't someone who gets up on a stage regularly like you do, but they have to present to the board. They have to sell their ideas. Maybe they're even a salesperson and they have to sell their proposal.
Yeah, I think everyone presents every day. It doesn't have to be in front of an arena of people. I think presentation skills is the key differentiator, whether it's one-on-one, one-on-three, that's presenting. But go ahead. I'm sorry. You were heading
How do you get
somewhere.
over the fear?
All right. So a couple of things. One, my greatest strength is I never had fear, but it was also my greatest weakness because I didn't prepare as much in the beginning because I didn't have fear. So I remember I took this presentation skills class 30 years ago. In Minneapolis for Aveda when I was presenting for them. I thought it was so stupid that I had to attend this class. It's like, I know this all. And it was one of the best classes. And immediately after that, I got to see, whenever I saw someone speak, I could tell who hasn't gone through a presentation skills class because they didn't have an icebreaker. They were random. They were word salad. They weren't storytelling, blah, blah, blah. Their slides sucked. But I remember one day, it was like, let's say it was a week-long class. One day we were, I made some friends with people in the class, and they weren't good presenters. They probably never presented since that. It just wasn't for them professionally. They never became professional speakers like some of the people in that class were there for. But we were going out, and we went out to dinner, me and these two other people. And then after dinner, I'm like, oh, where do you guys want to go now? And they were like, well, we have to go back to our rooms and rehearse for our 5-minute presentation tomorrow on whatever it was. And I made fun of them. I'm like, really? You have to go rehearse to speak for 5 minutes? And so I didn't rehearse. And then the next day we all did our presentations and I scored the lowest. And they outscored me. And they were really bad. Like they never presented again. But I wasn't prepared. I just got up and thought I could wing it. So I can't really talk to as much about the nervousness other than this. If you don't know your content, which, I didn't know my content, you're going to be more nervous. The more you present, rehearse, write it down. I think writing I think the two best things to becoming a presenter, besides taking a class, the two best keys to becoming a better presenter. And I actually think they're equal. I wouldn't say one, it's going to sound crazy. One is present. Right? Present to the Rotary Club, to your dog, to your staff. Present. But I actually think equal is write. Write it. because every time I have an idea, the first time I just say, I'm hot about this. And I present it. It's word salad. It's too long. It's choppy. I get the gist across. The audience probably gets it and it's probably an aha. But then I'll go write an article on it and I'll clean it up and concise it and shorten it. And the next time I present it, oh my God, it's so much more powerful than the word salad I did. So you gotta be prepared. You gotta know your content. You gotta prepare. So back in the 90s, when I still own the salons, but when the salons were popular, I had to go on TV a lot. We used to do makeovers, and I did, I did hair, but I wasn't, that wasn't my forte. And I loved going on TV, but I wasn't prepared because I was like Stacy, my wife, guru. But back then they wanted a guy, which was totally wrong, but we weren't going to turn down the opportunity. So I say, I'll do it. And I sucked because I didn't know what I was talking about. So I don't know if I ever could have in that topic, but you better know what you're talking about. You better prepare it. It goes back to your earlier questions, how much you need to prepare. You need to prepare less when you're redoing the compliment, right? So one of my other epiphanies is in 1999, I won the Entrepreneur of the Year in Cleveland and got to go to the National Award Show for Ernst & Young and see all these amazing speakers. It's probably the first time I saw just Stephen Covey, Guy Kawasaki, just a bunch of, and Guy Kawasaki just was at that time, was the best speaker I'd ever saw. He was hilarious and he had great content. And I was like, oh my God. This guy's amazing. So I waited in line with 300 people. And when I finally got there, I'm like, I'm a speaker too. How are you so good? Every word he said was perfect, was on point. And he just looked at me and says, I do this presentation 300 times a year. It's the same. It's like a Friends sitcom rerun. People laugh at the same point. People tear up at the same point. And so that, that repetitiveness really takes away any anxiety you can have.
The presentation skills class, how many of the people in there are people who want to become a professional speaker like you versus they're presenting to their team?
I think I'm going to venture to say it's usually 20% are people who want a career in speaking and 80% are people in the corporate world that want to get significantly better, because you have to sell your audience, employees, clients on your vision and rally them around. And so, so that's why, back to every time I speak to new employees at John Roberts Spa, I always tell them why we started the company 32 years ago. Because the industry was not known for good customer service, good employee experience, benefits, and something that didn't give back to the community. And great, talented hairdressers that worked with Stacy were quitting to go get real jobs. And Stacy would tell me, because she worked in the salons, when I was a UPS driver and we just got married, how a client came in today that didn't like the color of her hair and her boss threw her out. Hey, you paid for it, get the hell out of here. And, so she was always telling me about how really talented hairdressers who loved doing hair would quit and go get a real job. And the customer service was horrible and all these things wrong with the industry. And that's why we opened John Roberts to be different. So there was the villain, the victim, and that, John Roberts and you, new employee, are going to be the hero because we are building something different. So that goes back to the storytelling.
Great. Can people in a 2-day class really make that much progress? Can you in 2 days become a better speaker? Truly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, one of the best things I ever took was that class that I was forced to take 30 years ago with Aveda. I thought it was so stupid. I thought it was stupid because I had no fear of getting in front of people, which I thought was the only thing you needed to speak. And even back then, if you gave me an audience of 5 people, I was like, come on, are you kidding me? And I had no energy. I didn't want to do it. I wanted a stadium, but I realized that is 1/20th the fear or not fear of speaking. The content, the storytelling, the structure, the icebreaker, the motivational close, the storytelling versus just data was all the other things that I didn't know. So, the way we do it is day 1, you have to do it's actually a 3-day course. And day one, you do each of the elements individually. So Denise, get up and do your 2 to 3 minute icebreaker. And we all go around the room. And it's like America's Got Talent. Everyone in the room says, yeah, Denise, you could have, you kind of lost me on that, I'm not sure what you meant by that. And, that didn't tie. And that was very good. And then, you come up again after everyone, and then you do the setting the stage. You do all 5 elements individually on day one, get feedback. And then day 2 and 3, each person gets up and does a 20, 30-minute speech with all 5 elements together. And so you get to do it twice, once individually with feedback and then once revised, and they blend into you. So, but you're getting feedback, and as you've known this from your own experience, when I can really see that someone's becoming a better presenter, not only what they're doing on stage, it's the advice they're giving the other presenters. And they're saying, hey, Denise, you gave too many details, or you didn't give enough details, something that they were weak at, but now they're seeing it when they do other things. So that's really the beauty of it.
If there's one piece of advice you could give people that they could start working on right away to be a better speaker, what would it be? It
probably goes back to, one, it's not going to be one piece. One, always write notes and quotes and, oh, I love that, and put it in thing. And then, think about how you can work that in. Then write it out, write a blog, write, for yourself, write your speech, outline what, if you were to teach anyone on whatever your expertise is, what are the 5, 6, 8 structural points, and then just present it over and over again, and ask people for critical feedback. Thank God people were honest with me and didn't say, oh, that was really good. The Jack Mackey example, right? Hey, that's a good job. No, really, what could I have done? Really? Yeah, really. Would you pay for that speech? Would you pay to attend that? I think there's two things you could possibly do in a presentation. One, tell the audience something they've never heard of before. I don't know how much there is left of that. The second one is tell them in a way they've never heard it said that way.
Great advice. Thank you. And if you're interested in becoming a better speaker, please take a look at our presentation skills class. You'll find a link to that in the show notes, or you can visit the DiJuliusGroup.com under trainings, presentation skills. And that's a wrap. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and are ready to think about starting your own customer service revolution. To get inspired by more episodes, subscribe now on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening and for being part of the customer service revolution.